achieve our climate goals. The global stocktake underscores that we must continue to drive investments in climate action at all levels, put policies in place to incentivize change, and shift finance away from the things that put our shared prosperity at risk. And it makes clear that we will stand by and support our partners in developing countries every step of the way as they take ambitious steps to build clean energy systems and resilient futures for everyone. Mr. President, both the Paris Agreement and the global stocktake decision that we just adopted emphasize the importance of preparing and updating long-term strategies to reduce emissions and enhance resilience. 2 years ago, the United States and China committed in our Shanghai joint statement to update our long-term strategies by the Glasgow COP, which we both did. Most recently, we both issued the Sunnyland Statement, which we hope made a positive contribution to this COP. And today, I would join with Xi Jinping and Chinese delegation in announcing that the United States and China both intend, based on the many initiatives set out in the global stocktake decisions, we will again update our long-term strategies, and we invite other parties to join us in doing so. This decision and other key decisions of the CMA, including the Global Goal on Adaptation, establish critical work going forward to give effect to the global stocktake's recommendations. We look forward to working with all of our partners here to achieve these ambitions. And again, I say how deeply impressive I believe this multilateral effort is. I thank everybody here. The spirit of cooperation is palpable and significant, and I think a major statement by all countries participating about what we would like to see in so many other sectors of global relationships in this day and age. I thank all for the efforts here and for what we have accomplished. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, U.S. May I invite Bangladesh. Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency, for giving Bangladesh the floor. And let me first congratulate you and your team for the excellent work. If you recall, if I may share a personal conversation that I had with you when you visited Bangladesh towards the beginning of the year, I had said that this COP was going to be a litmus test for multilateralism. And I had also flagged the issue that the UN process, as it is currently structured, relies on consensus. And we also don't have an approved terms of reference for the entire COP process. It's been over 30 years, but still we have not been able to agree. So those were constraints. And I think what is perhaps one of the most impressive parts of this COP is, unlike in the past when we have all tried to hide behind the term consensus, we have tried to use that to protect our national positions. This is the first time that we have perhaps come out of our respective comfort zones and tried to look at the bigger picture. And we have all along said that consensus has to be on the basis of science. When the first draft was presented, we expressed, and we didn't mince words, that we were extremely disappointed because it didn't capture the ambition, and the North Star that you had talked about, I said, was now hiding behind dark clouds. I think over the last 2 days, thanks to the work and your initiative and that of your team, and our collective will, because at the end of the day, this is a member-driven process, and we have to really decide what we want to achieve. We have been able to remove those clouds. And what I see as significant is that this is the 28th COP. Between COP1 and COP27, we basically moved from one COP to the other. And here, I think we have not just transitioned, there is a potential of a game-changing outlook in terms of how we look at the COP processes. and we thank you, your leadership, and the team in that regard. The 1.5 degrees Celsius goal, and we have made it abundantly clear, this is not a political ask. This is not countries such as Bangladesh, LDCs, and climate vulnerable countries are asking for. It's not a political statement. It is the absolute upper limit that science tells us we can go to. And we feel that this then shapes the entire discourse in terms of mitigation, adaptation, funding, loss and damage, the entire chain. And let us not forget that the better we are at keeping temperature increase to within 1.5, the lesser will be the resources needed for adaptation. The lighter will be the burden on loss and damage. So this is critical. And as we unpack the text of the GST, I'm sure there will be issues which will require further clarification, which will require further discussion. And that the fundamental principle that we are going to have is the 1.5. So this is the spirit that we take out from here. When you convened the Majlis, Your Excellency, I think you used the words to the effect that we come in here with problems, with solutions, with fears, with apprehensions, and we want to go out of the Majlis with a solution. I think we are on the path to a solution through COP28, and again, we thank you for your initiative. Trust, solidarity is going to be absolutely imperative. Even if we had the perfect text, and we know that no text can be perfect, and this text is also not perfect, but it lays the foundation. Given continued trust, given continued goodwill, given continued empathy, given continued solidarity, we can build on it. And I think that is what we take back. Of course, we would have liked more specificity, more concrete steps. Adaptation is really a life and death issue for a lot of parties who are represented around the table. We cannot compromise on adaptation. We cannot compromise on lives and livelihoods. So the finance delivery, rather than just reporting what has been done, should actually be geared towards action to delivering the resources that we need. And that is absolutely fundamental. So as we go back with certainly better spirits, we also have to keep in mind that the real test is delivery on this. And if I may say so, we came to UAE and we looked upon it as the Asia Cup. We wanted to show that not just UAE, but Asia can also deliver. And I think all of us, and I thank all of the delegates that we have been able to do that. At least we have got off to a start. This is not the finish line. We have started on a line where everyone starts together. And I think this is the real achievement of this COP. UAE, as we know, and Dubai is a city of dreams. The impossible comes true. And this is a nation that was diving for pearls for thousands of years. And you are now reaching for the furthest stars in the galaxy. Let us also reach for that. And I believe that this COP is really going to set the tone for all future COPs. Let us have that trust. Let us have that empathy. Let us have that solidarity so that we can, in fact, when we look back at this COP 5 or 10 years from now, we can say that this was indeed, in delivery, a game-changing COP. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Bangladesh. I'd like to invite Bolivia to take the floor. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Bolivia habla en su posición nacional. Hemos cumplido 8 años desde la adopción del Acuerdo de París. El año 2015, la comunidad global decidió abordar la lucha contra la crisis climática con base en la equidad, con base en la diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo. Sin embargo, estos 8 años, los países desarrollados han trabajado intensamente para erosionar y borrar estos principios y transferir sus obligaciones vinculantes a los países en desarrollo. Al adoptar hoy la decisión del primer balance global, declaramos con gran pesar y enorme preocupación que los principios de la Convención y del Acuerdo de París se han deteriorado y disminuido un poco más. Bolivia no apoya y nunca apoyará la profundización de un mundo más injusto e inequitativo para luchar contra la crisis climática. Más capitalismo y más mercados no son la solución para los problemas que se derivan del capitalismo y los mercados. Más inequidad e injusticia no son la solución para los problemas de la inequidad y la injusticia en el mundo. No podemos apoyar resultados que lleven al mundo hacia una nueva era de implementación de la Convención y el Acuerdo de París sin equidad, sin responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas, sin diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo y sin medios de implementación y financiamiento concretos para los países en desarrollo. Los países desarrollados no han asumido tomar la iniciativa en la lucha contra la crisis climática, no aceptan cambiar sus estilos de vida y esto pone en mayor riesgo la vida de las personas en nuestra parte del mundo. Hablamos mucho de 1.5 grados, hablamos mucho de ciencia, pero los países desarrollados que tienen planes de expansión de los combustibles fósiles hacia el 2050 van en contra de la ciencia misma, de la que están hablando. En el mundo real, señor presidente, la estrella polar está cada vez más fuera de nuestro alcance. Es importante mantener vivo 1.5 grados, esto es importante para la humanidad y para la defensa de la madre tierra. Pero ¿cómo vamos a lograr esto sin diferenciación, sin compromisos vinculantes para trabajar en el marco de la equidad? Para ser equitativos y para trabajar con un mundo equitativo, los países desarrollados deberían haber propuesto alcanzar 0 combustibles fósiles ahora, en esta plenaria, pero posponen sus compromisos para el año 2050. Los países desarrollados responsables de la gran expansión en el mundo de la producción de combustibles fósiles son ahora los campeones de la estrella polar, son los campeones de mantener 1.5 grados a nuestro alcance. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de financiación, de que no hay financiación para el cambio climático, pero ponen enormes cantidades de dinero para financiar una enorme maquinaria industrial y para la guerra en el planeta. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de derechos humanos mientras provocan el genocidio de nuestros hermanos de Palestina. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de su mayor ambición en la lucha contra la crisis climática, ante la mirada de los medios de comunicación, pero en las salas de negociación de esta conferencia simplemente están obstruyendo, creando distorsión, confusión y añadiendo complejidad a todas las cuestiones que son prioritarias para los países en desarrollo. Los países desarrollados, en lugar de cumplir sus promesas, han optado por no respetar los acuerdos internacionales, mientras continúan insistiendo en que se deben imponer más reglas y objetivos a los países en desarrollo, aumentando el colonialismo, la desigualdad, la injusticia, el hambre y la pobreza en el mundo. Imponer objetivos para todos para el año 2050 va en contra del Acuerdo de París y refuerza el camino del colonialismo, creando mayores dependencias institucionales y financieras de los países del sur con respecto a los países del norte. Nos resistimos, presidente, a ser nuevamente víctimas de un nuevo colonialismo, que es el colonialismo de carbono. nos resistimos a ser tratados como personas y países que carecemos de nuestro derecho al desarrollo. Se necesita un cambio de paradigma, presidente. Es necesario cambiar el paradigma actual de los países desarrollados que está basado en la procrastinación, el colonialismo, la injusticia climática y la injusticia social. Tenemos que cambiar un nuevo paradigma basado en la cooperación, la solidaridad internacional, en la equidad y en la provisión de medios de implementación. Bolivia, presidente, acompaña el consenso de la declaración del pacto del primer balance global con la siguiente reserva. Bolivia hace una reserva a los artículos de la decisión del primer balance global que contravienen la implementación del Acuerdo de París en el marco de la operacionalización de los principios de equidad y responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas, así como el artículo 4.7 de la Convención y la provisión de financiamiento y medios de implementación, así como los artículos 9, 10 y 11 del Acuerdo de París y en particular el artículo 4, párrafo 5. Bolivia hace una reserva en particular al artículo 28 del primer balance global porque no incorpora los principios de equidad y responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas de la Convención y del Acuerdo de París. No existe ninguna referencia a la diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo y al hecho de que los países desarrollados deben asumir el liderazgo en la lucha contra la crisis climática. Tampoco existe una mención explícita a la provisión de financiamiento y medios de implementación por parte de los países desarrollados para avanzar provisión de financiamiento para las metas condicionadas establecidas por el país en su contribución nacionalmente determinada en el marco de la implementación del enfoque del vivir bien en armonía con la madre tierra. Pedimos que esta declaración se incorpore en los reportes de esta reunión. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you, Bolivia. Thank you, Bolivia. Colleagues, dear parties, may I ask you to keep your statements short, please? May I ask that you maintain a cap of 3 minutes, please? 3 minutes maximum. And yes, of course, you can submit your statements in writing on the UNFCCC website. And yes, your statements will be reflected in the report. We have a lot of work before us, and I would like to conclude our work in a timely manner. Allow me now to ask the EU. EU, you have the floor.
Let me start by wholeheartedly thanking the presidency and Dr. Sultan, you in particular, for your leadership, your vision, but also your tremendous tenacity. And that of your team and the team of Simon Steele for all their work and all their contributions. And dear friends, let me also say that we have found it a tremendous privilege to work alongside all of you from wherever you are, from Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, North America, Asia, the Pacific, and the Middle East. To team up, to bridge the divide, and to unite. Because, dear friends, when we are all long gone, our children and our children's children and their children will be there to deal with all the things we have left for them, the good and the bad. And with them in mind, and with that in mind, it makes this a day of gratitude, a day of solemn satisfaction, and maybe also of silent determination. And a day to salute the fact that humanity has finally done what is long, long, long overdue. 30 years. 30 years we've spent to arrive at the beginning of the end of fossil fuels and to bridge our ambition on adaptation, finance, and mitigation, to get concrete and actionable on 1.5, as scientists have urged us to do for so long. And to all our friends from around the world who will continue to need our help, the islands in particular, I want you to know, and I will say to you, that we will stand with you in unity during this transition for as long as is necessary. Because prosperity within the planetary boundaries is there to be had for all of us. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Colleagues, friends, dear President, we came here to assess and take a stock. We knew that the Paris Agreement first cycle needed to deliver, but what we did was not enough. We wanted to draw lessons that could facilitate the way forward to ensure that we keep the 1.5 within reach. To enable effective response to the climate challenges, working together in building climate justice and easing the way for a much more secure future for all. Not everything is done, but we have taken a very important step forward. As the Commissioner has said, it has taken more than 30 years since Rio to focus on how to go beyond a fossil-fueled world, to start a new discussion on finance being all climate-proof, to raise the bar on adaptation on a cooperative basis, to respond to the very legitimate demands of the most vulnerable countries to count on mechanisms to address losses and damages caused by climate impacts. We align our goals and aspirations to those in the High Ambition Coalition, and very much, in particular, to the most vulnerable parties. We pay attention to what Samoa has said, to what Bangladesh has said. Climate justice still needs our engagement, our work. We enter into a new phase, but it would be very important to engage more, to do more. That this step forward and our commitment, our joint commitment, delivers much more in this very critical decade, to work in an united manner, to act, to deliver. We welcome and thank the strong work and leadership shown by the COP presidency and his team, by the Secretariat, but also by all delegates. Climate science, activists, this is something where we can recognize a little bit or much coming from all of us. We welcome the committed dedication of all. We think that the most relevant thing here is that science and the 1.5 goal are at the center of the whole package. It needs to drive our action on climate, all to contribute, all committed. Friends, colleagues, it's time to do much more. We take a step forward, ensuring a sharp decline on emissions in line with the 1.5, peaking by 2025. 43 decline on emissions by 2030 and 60% by 2030 is demanded by the IPCC, is reflected in this test. This means building on climate justice. We need to provide a strong and clear message on the need to work on many different fields, but in particular, to accelerate action in energy transition and access to energy for all, to halt and reverse deforestation, to take into consideration biodiversity as the most relevant issues where people where humankind can build and keep on building prosperity. Adaptation is at the forefront and takes on the relevance it needs. Still, much needs to be done, but we understand that we need to work much more to ensure common goods such as fresh water, health, biodiversity, or food security. Early warning systems are very important. Delivering on loss and damage, changing the way we address climate in the international financial institutions, doubling adaptation funding are only the first step forwards. Back home, we Europeans are committed. Current action, current legislation ensures we will be doing more than 57% reduction by 2030. And we are committed in our legislation to achieve net zero by 2050 at the latest. We think that we need to provide public assistance, but it is also a task to go beyond that, to keep on doing things to ensure that climate-proof is the new reality when talking about prosperity. We are committed not to leave anyone behind. There are many things that we miss in this text, but we sincerely think that this is a very relevant and positive step forward, and we are very happy to take this step forward with you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, EU. May I ask Cuba to take the floor? Cuba, you have the floor.
Buenas tardes, señor presidente. Reconocemos la importancia y los resultados alcanzados en esta conferencia, para lo cual ha sido decisivo el papel de la presidencia emiratí y su equipo de trabajo en la búsqueda de posiciones comunes en un contexto que configura esta COP como una de las más complejas, sino la más difícil desde la adopción del Acuerdo de París en 2015. Las dificultades que hoy enfrentamos tienen múltiples causas. Entre ellas destaca, y ha sido aquí reiteradamente mencionada, el incremento de las emisiones y el constante cierre de la ventana de tiempo para mantener el aumento de la temperatura por debajo de 1.5 grados. Ese crucial objetivo ha sido caracterizado aquí como nuestra estrella guía, pero lo cierto es que más allá de ese propósito hay en el firmamento toda una constelación de propósitos que deberíamos poder alcanzar de manera balanceada, incluyendo los objetivos encaminados a la erradicación de la pobreza y alcanzar un desarrollo sostenible con equidad. Nuestro compromiso con el régimen climático es firme, como lo manifiesta nuestra contribución nacionalmente determinada. En Cuba estamos dispuestos a hacer más y tenemos el propósito político de transformar a renovables toda nuestra matriz energética en un 100%. Pero para ello no bastan los deseos y la voluntad. Se requieren cuantiosos recursos que a nivel doméstico tienen que competir con las necesidades de la adaptación, las pérdidas y daños y el balance de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Esa es la disyuntiva que enfrentamos los países en desarrollo. Por tanto, las decisiones que aquí tomemos deben ser totalmente coherentes con nuestras realidades. No por reiterado debemos dejar de enfatizar que el principal obstáculo hacia la meta de 1.5 está en el negativo legado de emisiones de los países desarrollados y su incumplimiento reiterado hasta hoy de los compromisos financieros en ayuda al desarrollo. En esa lista de responsabilidades hay que contar también la obsoleta, injusta y desbalanceada arquitectura financiera internacional, donde gravita sobre las economías de los países en desarrollo la crisis económica global el peso abrumador de la deuda externa y un sistema de comercio internacional cada vez más excluyente, en virtud del cual nuestros países enfrentan las consecuencias de la creciente imposición de medidas unilaterales bajo pretextos ambientales y por razones de carácter eminentemente político, como es el caso de Cuba. Señor presidente, a todos aquellos que han estado presionando aquí para asumir metas y compromisos que nada tienen que ver con nuestras responsabilidades ni circunstancias nacionales, les invitamos a hacer una reflexión profunda una vez retornen a sus países. Piensen en la historia, en cómo llegamos hasta aquí, en el despojo y la explotación a que fueron sometidas nuestros pueblos y que sirvió de base para un desarrollo que ahora nos está pasando factura en forma de cambio climático. Analicen sus propios deberes y obligaciones y tal vez eso les permita llegar a la próxima COP con los mensajes de responsabilidad, humildad y empatía necesarios para alcanzar mayores resultados. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Cuba. I'd like to invite Australia. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by recognising your personal leadership, tenacity, patience and courage. I know you've made many friends over the last year, and I know will remain friends for many years to come because of your personal leadership. You promised a strong result, and today we are delivering a strong result. Mr. President, I speak on behalf of the umbrella group of countries. The discussion at Dubai over the last 2 weeks has led to important milestones in our work to combat the climate crisis. We came together in solidarity at the beginning of this conference to agree to groundbreaking work on loss and damage. The new fund shows what we can do when we come together with an intent to deliver real outcomes. We've agreed to an ambitious new framework on the global goal on adaptation, which is very important. It elevates the role of adaptation within globally applicable targets that lay out a direction of travel and galvanise action and support. But undeniably, Mr. President, the central part of our discussions at COP28 has been the future of fossil fuels in our energy systems. Earlier this week, we called for more than a step forward, and today the world has stepped up. The outcome does not go as far as many of us asked for, starting with some of the most vulnerable countries, but the message it sends is clear, that all nations of the world have acknowledged the reality that our future is in clean energy and the age of fossil fuels will end. The global stocktake also shows that the nations of the world have come a long way under the Paris Agreement. 87% of the global economy is now covered by a climate neutrality target, and almost all countries have commitments to cut emissions. But the stocktake also shows us we have a long way to go, that we need a step change to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. The stocktake affirms the latest science that we will need to cut global emissions by 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035. We stand behind its call for future NDCs to be aligned with 1.5 degrees. This is the guiding North Star as countries prepare more ambitious NDCs. We stand behind its calls for NDCs to have economy-wide emissions reduction targets covering all cities for all countries. This delay cannot continue. We welcome the strengthened Sharm el-Sheikh dialogue on aligning finance flows with low emissions and climate-resilient development. This is an important area of work to reach the scale of global investment needed to reach 1.5 degrees. The new collective qualified finance goal due to be agreed next year is a pivotal moment to deliver urgent and necessary support for developing countries. We're pleased to see this acknowledgement and that the new goal must draw on the widest range of sources, including both public and private finance flows, domestic and international, both provided and mobilised. It needs to deliver a system transformation because the world has changed a lot in the last 30 years. Countries' capacities and circumstances have evolved dramatically since 1992, and so must their responsibilities. It's time, Mr. President, to have that discussion. because we need to pull every lever to achieve the scale of climate finance the world needs to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. We note the outcomes of the Just Transition Work Program. We must support our workers and communities who've powered our countries for generations to an empowered future with good jobs. The language on human rights is deeply concerning. Human rights are not something that parties can be encouraged to take into account. Human rights must be respected, promoted and fulfilled. We welcome the decision on the Youth Climate Champion and note it complements the diversity of youth voices in the process and important role that Youngo plays. Parties, the next 2 years will be a true test of the Paris Agreement. We will have bent the curve or we will have lost 1.5. We must join together in the highest possible ambition. This week shows what's possible when the world comes together. We need to take this energy home and turn it into action. Mr. President, just a few brief comments on Australia's behalf. I want to...
Thank you, Australia. I'd like to invite Switzerland. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the Environmental Integrity Group, comprising Georgia, Liechtenstein, Mexico, Monaco, the Republic of Korea, and Switzerland. Let me first thank you and your team and the Secretariat for the hard work you delivered, not only over the last 2 weeks, but also about the last months. Mr. Chair, this is a crucial moment. For the first time, humanity is coming together in its diversity to agree on a managed transition away from the one resource which has enabled so much development. And for the first time, we decide that we want this transition to be just, to benefit all, and to respond to the urgency according to science. We stand by a clear message. The future is not fossil fuels, because there is no world where we can keep 1.5 alive if we continue investing in fossil fuels. And there is no equity in a world above 1.5. The energy package is a start, but it's not enough. The signal we give to decision makers and investors are absolutely critical. We need the energy package to be more precise and quantified and to deliver a sense of urgency. We need to define this further as we move to Belém in 2025. We need a commitment to follow up on its objectives on a yearly basis, and we're determined to bring accountability to the energy transition. What happens next year to respond to the outcomes of COP28 will be critical. The moment of truth that will define whether COP28 is the crucial milestone will be when countries submit their new climate targets. The elements are there for a good response, but everyone needs to be fully engaged. We welcome the encouragement for all countries to move towards economy-wide NDCs and to peak global emissions by 2025. We look forward to the capacity-building workshops, and we look forward to working with the presidencies to build political momentum around the highest possible ambition in submitting new NDCs, including with those who have the most contribute to the Paris Agreement. We are pleased to see the adoption of new targets for adaptation, which allow us to prioritize adaptation actions across water, health, ecosystem, and especially vulnerable ecosystems like oceans, mountains, and the cryosphere. They clearly lay out the actions that governments are expected to take. It is clear that we need to accelerate our work to make all financial flows consistent with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. We would have liked to see a much stronger signal in this regard, but appreciate that we can at least strengthen our dialogue on 21C and look forward to working with parties to unlock and shift global capital towards our common objectives. We further welcome the new dialogue on implementation, which will give us the opportunity to ensure that our collective actions, support, and broader financial flows will allow us to meet objectives set out in this global stocktake and take us to a low-emission and climate-resilient future. We regret losing references to conflict sensitivity, gender responsiveness, and respect for human rights on loss and damage. Those are crucial elements to make our support effective and to address them to the ones most in need. Excellencies, colleagues, let us keep continuing working together, striving for the highest ambition, listen to science, and build on this momentum to keep our guiding star in reach. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. May I ask Venezuela to take the floor? Venezuela, you have the floor.
Saludos, señor presidente. Venezuela enfrenta una de las peores crisis de su historia y en todos los ámbitos: financiero, energético, climático, alimentario, institucional y cultural, afectando así la vida del planeta entero. Nuestra región es una de las más vulnerables del planeta como consecuencia de los efectos de esta crisis climática, al sufrir los impactos crónicos y graduales de los eventos naturales cada vez más intensos y más extremos, lo cual repercute y paraliza los avances del desarrollo sostenible y la lucha contra la pobreza, no solo de mi país, sino de todos nuestros pueblos. Para Venezuela, el artículo 28 deja espacios abiertos a la interpretación y queremos dejar constancia en acta, presidente, en esta reunión lo siguiente. Nada de lo especificado en el párrafo 28 disminuye las obligaciones que se establecen en la Convención del Acuerdo de París. No pueden ser reinterpretados y se especifican claramente que los países desarrollados deben tomar la iniciativa de acciones de mitigación. Es por ello que desearíamos que hubiese sido incluido en los países en desarrollo. Hemos trabajado arduamente en la defensa de los principios de responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas, la equidad, la promoción y la defensa de los derechos de la madre tierra, la justicia climática, la necesidad de mayor financiamiento para la adaptación y la acción climática, así como el derecho al desarrollo de los pueblos en el contexto de la crisis climática capitalista. Esto sigue siendo la ruta que en adelante los países y los pueblos del mundo debemos seguir. No queremos finalizar, presidente, esta intervención sin antes agradecer al gobierno de Emiratos Árabes Unidos por su arduo trabajo tratando de lograr acuerdos por el bien de la humanidad y en esta compleja negociación. Y recordar las palabras de nuestro padre Simón Bolívar: mucho hemos hecho, pero más nos queda por hacer. Como una invitación a seguir construyendo juntos un camino para la salvación del único planeta que tenemos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Colleagues, may I ask all parties to please limit their statements to a maximum of 3 minutes. A maximum of 3 minutes. I'll turn to Zambia. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much.